Ratione Beate Mariae semper Virginis collaudare, benedicere et predicare, quae et unigenitum tuum Sancti Spiritus ob umbratione concepit, et virginitatis gloria permanente lumen aeternum mundo effudit, Iesum Christum Dominum nostrum.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Pinedo Brothers Podcast. The Army Man is back, Peter!
Hey! Back from Hero Squad!
Hero Squad. So in case you're just joining us, I'm JP. My brother Peter is away at military camp. Hey, Pete.
Mm-hmm. Hello. I'm Peter.
How's it going over there?
Oh, it's going good. Nice and hot over here. Apparently, the Midwest gets the worst of all the seasons. It's humid during the summer and freezing cold during the winter. I don't know why anyone lives here.
Yeah, as a Franciscan grad, you've experienced all of it.
Yeah.
So I guess that's why they're hardy in the Midwest, I suppose. They come from hardy stock.
Good people. Good. I don't want to insult anyone from the Midwest. What are you doing? Why are you here?
Well, I know that you have limited time to chat with us. I'm so excited that we're able to do both the Pinedo brothers back on to chat. And I was hearing so much news about the Pope's recent statement about the Tridentine Mass, the traditional Tridentine Rite of Mass, which for those that don't know, it was started in the 1500s as a counter-Reformation tactic where there was a lot of misinformation going around about the Eucharist. And so they had the Council of, I think it was Trent, correct, Peter?
That sounds right.
Yeah. And someone can leave a comment if I'm getting this wrong. We're kind of running and gunning a little bit here because we weren't sure if Military Man could join us. But I've been wanting to talk to you about this, Peter. So I'm glad that we're chatting. The Council of Trent came up with a way to make clear to everyone what's happening during the Mass, especially during the Eucharist. And the way that they did that, the Tridentine Rite, which was a way of saying Mass in Latin that made clear on the altar the Eucharist. And so there's a lot more to be said about that. But recently, in Vatican II, there was a new rite that was installed called the Novus Ordo rite. And Novus Ordo is what most people in America these days know. I mean, there's many rites in the church. The church is very large. And most people have only seen the Novus Ordo, although I don't know how many rites there are, but there's quite a few. And the Pope recently, just after, it's interesting, Pope Benedict XVI was very much encouraging people to do the Tridentine Rite. Pope Benedict's kind of MO was reversed completely just recently by Pope Francis, where he's released a statement that was very discouraging of the Tridentine Rite, making it that any priest or parishioner that wants to have this rite now has to go directly to the Pope, not to the Pope, but to the Vatican to get permission. And first it's to the local bishop, and then after that, the bishop needs to go to the Vatican to get permission. So he's really making that quite a process now, when before it was pretty simple to do the Tridentine Rite, this older rite from centuries ago. But I wanted to chat with you, Peter, because we're both artists, and you're a historian, or at least a history major. I'm not sure if you'd refer to yourself as a historian, and I'm a history lover. As an artist and a historian, I'd love to chat with you about what you see as the differences here between the two rites, the Novus Ordo and the Tridentine, and then maybe kind of explain both based on their merits.
Mm-hmm.
What's your take, though, about the Pope's recent, I guess it's not a proclamation so much, but his recent statements?
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, I'm not very familiar with his statements and what he said exactly. So I wouldn't really want to comment too much on his statements without actually reading them myself. I'd have to look into it more, but I do know that Pope Francis has definitely historically been more, much less on the traditional side than, let's say, Pope Benedict XVI. And I think I would be confused, like you were saying, that basically he was kind of discouraging its use. Was he saying that, so it's like, what about parishes who are already doing like the Tridentine Rite?
They could get shut down. They have to go to their bishop or cardinal, whoever's in charge of their diocese, and get permission. And that bishop or cardinal needs to go to the Vatican to get permission. And we'll have to see how often the Vatican does give permission, but that was not the case prior. There was not that much red tape prior to now. You operated under the auspices of your bishop, but the bishop was encouraged to be like, sure, that's fine. Just like how most of the parish activities do generally operate under the good auspices of the bishop of the diocese. So this is quite a shift.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, that is kind of, I would say, a little bit alarming. I don't know why that would be an action that I don't see like what the purpose for that is. Like, I didn't see any problem with having the Tridentine Rite. I'm always kind of like hesitant to jump to conclusions, or try to be hesitant for anything, but especially for Pope Francis, just because it's oftentimes been very difficult to.
He's a little bit of a loose cannon, huh?
Yeah,
go ahead.
It's difficult to get like a clear picture of what's going on and what's being said, because everybody is very opinionated, and you have the especially like the news, the media, and stuff like that. They always jump the gun because they're like, Pope Francis is our guy. He's like, he's our guy inside the church, and he's going to change everything.
Yes, change what the church teach,es He's going to do it.
And then he's always like, yeah, actually, that's not what we're going to do.
Well, I once heard a a comparison, and it was meant to get people outraged about it. But someone once compared Pope Francis to then President Trump, as you never know what's going to come out of his mouth, and you can always count for sure that the media is going to conflate it or take it the wrong way.
Yeah,
which there's something to be said up for that comparison.
Yeah. I'm always kind of hesitant to really take it in, and so that's why I always said I would want to read the statements exactly and then look more into it. Something I do know about Pope Francis is that I've always been very impressed with his. He just seems like a very, very loving person. I remember like a couple of years ago, he visited Africa, and there were these two basically warring factions, like a civil war going on in this country. I forget which country it was in Africa. And he gathered all the leaders of the different warring factions. He had them all meet in one room, and then he walked in, and the first thing he did was like, with these leaders who are basically warlords and like pretty like rough men, he comes in and he immediately goes to his knees and he kisses both of their feet, both of them, just kind of showing them like, this is an example of love and servant leadership. Like, this is, he humiliates himself to prove to them that like, hey, this is not the way it has to be. So I've always been very impressed with he seems like very genuine in the way that he loves people. And he's definitely, a lot more liberal than, say, past recent popes. But of course, like when we're talking about the church and Catholicism to me it's not really about left and right. It's about
Good point.
And so like, yeah, I'm more on the right, but also probably more on the right than Pope Francis, but also it's like I'm saying, it's not about that in the church.
Yeah. Well, I was having a conversation this week with our other brother, Joseph. There's three brothers. There's that don't know. There's three brothers. And our other brother, Joseph, was, he attends a parish like that, that is of the Tridentine Rite. That's all they do is masses in the Tridentine Rite. And one of the things that we were trying to figure out, we had just gone to Mass, Tridentine Rite Mass in the morning. And we were trying to figure out why would he be doing this? And one of the things that we both kind of came up with is perhaps it's a political thing, in which he is, like you said, more of the left than, and I love how you pointed out that as Catholics, we shouldn't be thinking just right and left. That's more what people outside the church think. And then that view is imposed more inside the Catholic Church. But I fall into that trap all the time. I think of myself as right, of the right, and very proud of the fact. But I think that's more my Americanism probably coming through, which I'm very proud of, by the way, my Americanism. And what I would say is, I think there's a good chance that there are within the hierarchy priests that are more of the right, that have a preference for the Tridentine. And I'm wondering if this might be a way that people are pushed out of the hierarchy, pushed out of maybe the Vatican, because they are of that Tridentine Rite. They like it more. They have a preference for it. And someone like Joseph, our brother, could be just collateral damage, where you're not really thinking of the person in the pews as much as you're thinking of the bishops and cardinals that are around you that are maybe bothering you. And maybe they're bothering you for a good reason, or maybe they're bothering you for a bad reason. We don't know. We're not part of this political thing. We just experience the life in the pews, and in the pews is a little difficult, especially for someone like Joseph, who is of that Latin Rite, of the Tridentine Rite. That's his preferred way to worship. So I guess that kind of brings me to a little bit of, unless you had comments to say, of the why would someone have that preference? Then maybe we kind of analyze the artistic merits of them both. I think you've attended the Tridentine Rite several times in the past, correct?
Many times, yeah. I've served at it too, a good bit. So
that's a difficult thing to do, to serve at a Tridentine.
Yeah, it's very complicated. Yeah, I've served 3 different rites.
For people that don't know, altar serving, it means you're one of those boys that are up there that are always stumbling around and not sure what to do. The altar server,
lost at the altar.
to say that you're serving is to say you're one of the altar servers during a mass.
Yeah, exactly. The masses. Yeah, but when you look at them, I've served at Tridentine, the regular Novus Ordo, and then the Anglican Rite as well. They're they differ in a lot of ways for sure. But they're both very beautiful, I would say. And there's a lot of like compare and contrasting you could do. But I guess if you are looking at it from a very basic perspective, if you're not very familiar with either mass, for anyone watching, that the Tridentine, it was started around the 1500s, somewhere in there. And so it is very, very deeply rooted in that kind of older form of the faith. It's
what does that mean when you say that?
It's rooted very much more in I guess what you would think of almost with like the medieval church, and the obviously 1500s is not medieval times, but it's coming out of that, and that kind of tradition. In the Tridentine, I think you face, the priests face ad orientem, which is to the
Right.
east, which is,
Towards the tabernacle.
symbol towards the tabernacle, but the tabernacle, towards that way that's facing east, a symbol of, where Jerusalem is and
Right.
where Christ died and rose from the dead. And so it's like, it's very much full of that symbology and things like that are very, very beneficial to people in many ways. And kind of my view has always been that it's a good mass. It's like, it's a good thing to have. I'm not like the hugest fan of it. My preference would be to attend the Novus Ordo Mass for a bunch of different reasons, which we'll get into. But that's something I've always kind of appreciated about the Catholic faith, and because Catholic literally is a word that means universal. And so that we have all these different rites and these different ways to participate in the one true faith. And so it's always been like something that's very beautiful to me, that you can have different ways of different forms of the same fundamental truth, different forms of expressing the same fundamental truths. Both masses, you have the actual, the transformation of bread and wine into the body and blood of Christ. And so both of them at their core are the same, and both of them are sacraments that bring a heavenly reality down to earth. So they're both extremely, extremely beautiful and powerful. And they're both valid and good, I would say. I kind of prefer to go to the Novus Ordo because for me, that is I can more easily participate in the sacrament. It's a little bit more focused, I think, on having the laity participate. Because very much in the 1500s, I think that, at least in my line of thought, the focus was definitely is as it should be on God and doing the sacrament, but the people are kind of an afterthought almost, because they don't really participate that much in the Mass.
Yeah, that's a big switch between the Novus Ordo and the Tridentine, is the level of participation. If someone who hasn't attended the Tridentine Mass, you're going to see a lot of the servers saying the responses. So it's the priest saying a prayer, the servers saying the prayer, but the congregation is largely silent. There's not as much the interaction between the congregation and the priest, or the congregation and the celebrant offering up this prayer. So it sounds like you kind of missed that interaction.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard it too, that like when you the Tridentine Mass can take some time to get used to, because at first you can almost like completely zone out because the priest is not facing you, and he only faces you for like a moment for, here and there. And he also doesn't really talk out loud.
Right. There's a lot of mumbling that goes on in this.
It's kind of mumbling, whispering different prayers, and it's completely in Latin. So
right.
you don't, unless you're fluent in Latin. So unless you're a dead Roman, then you're probably not gonna.
Well, that's actually one of the things I wanted to say in its defense here. Not that you're attacking it at all, but I would say from an artistic perspective, there is a lot to say about the Tridentine Rite that you can't say about the Novus Ordo Rite. Actually reading the prayers, they're quite magnificent. I wish I had if I had just a couple more minutes, you know what, I'm going to post on the comments section one of the prayers, one of my favorite prayers, that people can take some time to actually see it, because they're magnificent. They're absolutely gorgeous, and the Latin tongue is a romantic language. I mean, the Latin is the Romance language from which the other Latin tongues sprung, and English is very Germanic, which is more guttural, which is, just look at Shakespeare. It's gorgeous. Shakespeare, Milton can prove that the English language is absolutely gorgeous, but there is from just an aesthetic perspective, something about the Latin tongue that is quite beautiful. But just look at the reason why Gregorian chant is still something that's so beloved by people today. It's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I love Latin. I studied it for many years, and still don't really know that much about it. But it's a beautiful language, and it was actually it's funny that we're talking about this, because just literally earlier today I was talking to another guy here who's in the military.
In Hero Squad?
Yeah, and Hero Squad. You wouldn't get the wrong idea. I should probably not be saying that. Anyway, I was talking to this guy. Yeah, he's an officer here with me, and he it was very interesting. He was telling, I don't know how we really ended up talking about this, but he was telling me that he was raised Greek Orthodox, and he had fallen away from the faith, and he had been atheist for a while. But he said just over quarantine time, over the 2020, he started to make a move back towards his faith. But he's still where he is right now. He's not really sure where he wants to go and what he's looking for exactly. But he has started to believe more, and he says he's not atheist anymore. And I asked him what he considers himself now, and he doesn't not really anything, it sounded like. But he said he's very attracted to Catholicism, and he's very interested in Catholicism because of he was telling me literally because of the tradition. He's he really likes history, he was saying, and he says he's very attracted to the sacramental side of Catholicism and how it's deeply rooted in tradition. So something like the Tridentine Mass, I bet this guy would be very much attracted to, because that's what is pulling him towards Catholicism, that sense of the sacred, which it sounds like he is looking for. So yeah.
That's something you see a lot of. That's very exciting to me that you brought that up, because there is a postmodernist reaction, which the modern day person is wondering, who am I? How can I find out my roots? What is this person that I'm in? That I am, not that I'm in. That'd be a little bit duality there, but this person that I am. And a way that we know our story, and we talk a lot about knowing our story, is through tradition. I remember I was having a conversation with my wife, and she was admiring the Jewish faith because of all the traditions that they have. And I was trying to say, hey, we're cool too. I was saying, well, so do Catholics. Catholics have an enormous amount of tradition, but you do lose a little bit of that maybe in a more modern day type of rite. The Novus Ordo rite, would you say it has less tradition, or what would you how would you categorize that?
Yeah, it's interesting. It is interesting because the Novus Ordo is definitely, it is much more modern, obviously. I think it was first started in the 70s or something like that, I think, when Vatican II was.
Post-Vatican II, yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that sense of mystery and that sense of tradition can be lost a little bit in the Novus Ordo Mass, but I don't think it necessarily has to at the same time. Because still the Mass is definitely still a sacred mystery, and that you can very much participate in. Just the forms of the prayers and everything, all of it is still very much deeply rooted in the Old and New Testament, and this sense of Catholic tradition. So I would say it's still very, very much there. But I could see it being, you could possibly lose it a little bit because of that sense of an otherworldliness is not as much quite apparent, I would say.
Right. What would you say, if we experience something that we don't understand and yet we believe to be true, or we believe to be significant or of importance, that carries a mystery, right? That's something that says this is This is a mysterious thing which is important or true, but I don't understand it, and yet I know that I should be here. I should be doing it. It's like Peter saying, it is good for us, so good that we are here, Master. And when he's at the Transfiguration and he's scared out of his wits because he's seeing the glory of God in front of him. And we don't know why it's good, but we can mutter, oh, it's good that we're here. So what would you say to the fact that the mystery of anything gives us more appreciation for it? It maybe even speaks to us at a deeper level than something which is known, because the mystery speaks to us more on a subconscious level, and it affects us deeper. What would you say to that kind? It just sprung to my mind, so I'm not sure even I understand or believe that. But what do you think?
So you're asking what about like mystery that connects us with what is good and true, or like what exactly did you ask?
I'm saying if you experience something which you believe is important or true or worthwhile, let's say, like put yourself in Peter's shoes. Like he's at the mountain of transfiguration. Jesus is bathed in heavenly glory, and he's seeing the two Jewish like heroes, like the superheroes. It's like as if, you know, Thor and Iron Man descended from the skies, except way better than that. But there is a lot to be said about that. So you're in this presence of something which it is all you can say, it is good that I am here. But you don't understand it, you know? There's some mystery to it that is beyond you. Is there something to be said about the fact that the mystery itself is worthwhile? You know, is the mystery, the fact that it is mysterious, make it speak to you on an even deeper level than if it wasn't mysterious?
I think when it comes to like things like the Mass, having that sense of mystery is a big part of the sacrament and of really connecting you with heaven, with Christ. I would say that it's present in both of the Masses, though, because by its very nature, the Mass with Misa is you know, the word for sacrifice. It is by its very like definition, and it is a mysterious event, because what we're saying is happening is, you know, the transformation of bread and wine into body and blood. So that itself is a mystery that we can't really comprehend, but we participate in the most beautiful way possible. So I would say it's yes, you are right as far as that sense of mystery, but I don't think that the Tridentine Mass has a monopoly on that mystery, if that makes sense.
No, it doesn't. But I think there is a greater sense of mystery because it is in a language that it's not in, they used to call any language that wasn't Latin the vulgar language, the language that people spoke of. It's in our vulgar tongue. And you know, the priest is facing us the whole time. You know, there is that back and forth. And I'm not trying to rag on the Novus Ordo. Actually, all cards on the table, I do prefer the Novus Ordo, but I guess there's a rebel in me where if someone says you can't do that anymore, I'm like, why? Why can't I do it? Come at me, bro. Like, why? You know? And I would want that argument backed up. And so I guess that probably reveals a lot about myself. But I'm wondering if the young people of today that you and I make up that part, fellow young people are rediscovering the Tridentine and finding worth in it because there is a mystery in it. There is a tradition. It's steeped in something that's beyond what we can understand, and that makes us try and reach for it. Something that I get very frustrated in the pews about is the fact that everything is laid out to me, especially in homilies. I guess I don't want to turn this into a rant against, homilist, but I don't want to hear that everything is fine. I know that everything isn't fine. I know that I fall short, and I listen to the world around me. I know other people fall short all the time. So everything is categorically not fine. And I want to be challenged to say, okay, this is how you can be better. This is how you can reach beyond yourself in a way. And so I think a lot of times when we are in the Novus Ordo Mass, we're maybe treated too much like babies. And we're not challenged enough. Not all the time. There's many a good Novus Ordo Mass that are reverent and awesome. And by awesome, I mean awe-inspiring, and reveal the mystery that is the Mass. But I think there is quite a lot to be said about the youth, the young like us that are inspired to go to the Tridentine, because maybe they're challenged more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you do kind of get that sense of, I think a big part of it is that sense of otherworldliness. Like the making real to people that this like earthly existence is not the only like mode of existence. And I think that really speaks to many people who are actively looking and searching for something that's deeper and something that's true. Yeah, so I would definitely, I think I would agree with that. Yeah, I don't think that the Tridentine Mass is something that should be ended or discontinued. That being said, I think that if it was, the faith would still persist and the faith would still be going forward.
Yeah, but there would be a lot of collateral damage. There's a lot of people that are in the pews that are excited about their faith that would either become not excited about their faith, would become jaded because this is something that they value very much, because it is worth valuing. It is beautiful from an artistic perspective. There is so much to be said about the mystery of that rite. And if that, or, it's either they become jaded and not excited about their faith, or they decide that they no longer want to be in union with the Catholic Church. Yeah, it become more schismatic, which you see that already. So I do have concerns about that.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Your thoughts?
Yeah, that is very much a concern. We don't want another schism. My friend, like this friend I was talking to earlier, was raised Greek Orthodox. That's right. The signs of a schism that happened literally like 1,000 years ago.
Yep.
And we're still having the effects of it. So like these divisions in the church are very harmful to the people. They're very harmful to people, not only in the present, but also in their eternal.
Yeah.
And that's a thing that is such a huge responsibility for the bishops and for the Pope, that I can't even imagine that weight that's on their shoulders, because they're responsible for people's eternities. Like as a leader myself, like I'm responsible for people's presence, like their present. I'm responsible for maybe like today and for tomorrow and for the next month or week or whatever. And I affect them in that way. But the bishops have this terrifying responsibility of having thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of souls on their shoulders. And I know that must come with like terrifying, a terrifying weight and a terrifying, I know that the devil must be really, really, really like after them. They are the biggest targets in the world. And so like, I can't imagine what that must be like for them. But at the same time, like you can't allow like things like politics and the things of the day affect your decision making and your and what you do that affects the people's eternities. Church is like what we were talking about earlier, like left and right. We don't want to think in that way because those are passing things. Those are things that have to do with the 21st century. But we're not talking about that. We're talking the 21st century is less than a blip on a radar of eternity.
Right.
And we have, as Catholics, we're called to have that eternal outlook.
Well, just look at the left. I mean, what they said yesterday is completely different from what they said today, you know, like, and look at the French Revolution. You know how the term right and left came to be? It was the French, everyone that revolted in the French Revolution, they were in their assembly, and the most radical would be on the left, and the least radical would be on the right. And gradually what would happen is everyone on the left started killing off everyone on the right. And so people would scoot, it's like who used to be on the left scooted to the right because it just kept getting more and more radical, and the least radical kept on dying. So, you know, literally day to day, that term changes.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, going back to the just talking about like the artistic merits and stuff of the Mass, it's really interesting. Just last Sunday, I had a chance to go to Mass, and it was the Novus Ordo Mass, and it was kind of cool because there is a line in the Mass when the priest, I think, is blessing the bread and wine before the consecration. He's talking about, he says, like, let your spirit descend upon them like the dewfall or something like that. And he's talking about the Spirit, Holy Spirit coming down onto the to the bread and wine. And that was always like I've actually heard that line criticized by people who are more traditional, because they're like that line doesn't even make sense because dew doesn't fall. It just like, it's there, you know? But when when the priest said that line, he stopped for a moment, and he was like, there was like a realization. And I had the same realization, because in earlier in the Mass, the scripture readings had been talking about the manna coming in like dewfall in the desert for the Jews. And he had talked about that during his homily, and how, you know, that was God's form, like a prefiguration of the Eucharist, and how it's God providing for his people. And like, I don't know if he realized even that, like, that's where that line is coming from right there. And I realized, I was like, oh my gosh. So it's still like, the Novus Ordo is very much rooted in that tradition and that scripture still.
Yeah, every bit of the Mass comes from scripture. And it's all intertwined within itself. It's the best story that anyone could ever make. It's the Mass.
Yeah. And so I think I don't know, man, maybe the main takeaway here is like, is the church needs lots of prayer, and that we don't become so divided, and don't sow the seeds of schism and things like that. But of course, like, focusing on Christ is what's really important. And both are very, very good, I would say.
And we're in constant need of reform. Like, the church has always needed reformation, and not the kind of reformation that creates the Protestant revolts, but a reformation that actually cleanses that which is dirty. There's a lot that's dirty within the church. Clearly, we've seen this. And I think this is a time for the laity to be more active than ever before. There's so few priests out there. There's many good ones, but there's so few priests. The laity needs to be more involved. The time of comfortable Catholicism is over. We need to be active and working in this day and age. I think we're close to finding a parish. I'm just kind of speaking to myself, so speaking out loud. We're close to locking down what our parish is going to be, and we need to be active within that. That's something that I would encourage everyone to be active. And then another thing to take away is don't have faith in priests. Don't have faith in popes or bishops or cardinals. Our faith is in Christ, right? Our priests are anyone who's part of the hierarchy are our leaders, but they're not the object of our faith. So if they let us down, that hopefully will not destroy that faith, that precious gift that we've been given. And we can go out and try to clean up whatever they've done that is wrong. But obviously, I love how Peterson says, clean up your own room first. Jordan Peterson, clean up your room, young man. And that's something I think of a lot, is like, I'm not sure I feel equipped to go out and say my parish priest is wrong if my front lawn still has weeds in it. It's like I need to weed my front lawn. So anyway, many takeaways. Army man, I think we're running out of time for you. Thank you for making time to chat with me, us civilians.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's been very interesting conversation, and it's a lot of these things have been coming up in conversation with people, both here and then like people I've been talking to, and it's crazy because there's a lot of confusion that's going around.
Yeah. And
like what you were saying with the bishops, don't place your faith in the bishops and in the popes and things like that, because and that's very, very true, because I think oftentimes as Catholics, it can be a confusion for us, that because we really look up to bishops and things like that more than most faiths. We place a value in that, and that's because they are there to be our shepherds, to be our guides. But ultimately, our faith is not about them. And like I was saying, they're probably targeted by the devil more than anyone else in the world. And so like we have to pray for them, pray for their integrity and their that they can be true to their calling. But yeah, as Catholics, that's another danger that we can fall into, and that of placing our trust in them instead of Christ. Because we're Christians, we're called to be followers of Christ and not of earthly leaders.
Right.
And St. Paul says that. You say, I belong to the church of Paul, I belong to the church of Timothy, or whatever. He's like, no, we're all Christians. We're all called to be followers of Christ. That's
right. Absolutely. Well, a good place to leave it there. I hope everyone, you found this conversation helpful. If you would, leave us a comment, a like, and a subscribe. It helps quite a bit. Something exciting. Peter, after this, I'm going to show you. Everyone, I'm working on PinedoBrothers.com. I hope you get a chance to check it out. PinedoBrothers.com is on its way. I'll link to it if we have it ready by the time this posts in a few days. There's a lot of good stuff on there, and we'll talk more about that on our next time. All right, Pete, I miss you.
Miss you too. Thanks for joining us, everyone. It's been the Pinedo Brothers.
We'll see you all next time.